Welcome back. This is Brighter Morning with Bo, and I am Bo Tiwari. And our first guest this morning is the Honorable Minister of Energy, Mr. Stuart Young, and we will talk to him right away. Good morning, Minister Young. Thanks for agreeing to come on the program.
Hi, good morning, Bo. Good to see you, and it's always a pleasure to be here. Thanks for the opportunity.
Yeah, no, thank you very much. And you know, recently you have been involved as Minister of Energy, first of all, in the signing of an agreement with Shell. And the agreement with Shell really sets the framework for us to begin to drill for gas in shallow water in the Manatee field, which is partially owned by Venezuela and ourselves. So this is a cross-border arrangement that we are bringing to fruition as a country, involving the government of Trinidad and Tobago and the private sector. Could you talk a little bit about that and its meaning and implications for Trinidad and Tobago? And why was this signing done now?
Thanks a lot, Bo. This is a perfect opportunity to explain to Trinidad and Tobago what is going on in energy, not only in Trinidad, but globally. You would have heard a lot of conversation, especially coming out of COP26, about the future of hydrocarbon fuels, which are coal, oil, and gas. We have no coal production, which is a major polluter globally. There's then oil, which we have some production of, we're just between 60,000 70,000 barrels a day. But our major production in Trinidad is gas. Gas is the hydrocarbon that's here to stay. Gas, fortunately for Trinidad and Tobago, is the hydrocarbon we've become dependent on and we've been producing, focused on for the last few decades, so we were ahead of that game. It's generally recognized that gas is the cleanest burning hydrocarbon fuel, and right now the projections are to 2050 and beyond. So with that context, gas is critical to Trinidad and Tobago. The Manatee field is part of Loran Manatee. The Manatee side is wholly on the Trinidad and Tobago border. The Loran side of gas is on the Venezuelan side of the border. Together, Loran Manatee is about 10 to 11 TCF of gas, which is a huge field. In Trinidad, it's estimated that just about 2.7 TCF is on the Manatee side. Both in energy and for us to keep our feedstock of gas going, because gas feeds into Atlantic LNG for the production of LNG, liquid natural gas, and then you have the petchem side, which is at Point Lisas mainly, and that's feeding into production of ammonia, urea, UAN, and methanol. And then you have some smaller manufacturing companies that take natural gas as part of their feedstock. So gas is critical to the future of Trinidad and Tobago. Trinidad and Tobago, as I've been saying since your days in Parliament, Bo, is a mature province. That means we've been going at it. These are depleting resources. We've been going at it for decades. Oil, well over 100 years. We've been mining oil in Trinidad and Tobago. And so it is a depleting resource. So to ensure that we have a continued future in gas, you have to continue gas production. Manatee is extremely significant to Trinidad and Tobago because it is the largest gas field, that 2.7 TCF, that is going to be produced in Trinidad and Tobago in decades. It was not an easy task because years ago, the Loran Manatee field will be signed with Venezuela for unitization, which basically means both governments would develop it, their sides at the same time, to ensure that the resources are brought to production at the same time. Unfortunately, because of the geopolitics of the world, we all know what happened with Venezuela, the sanctions came. So the government saw an opportunity, really the vision of the Prime Minister, let us speak to Venezuela to see if they would allow us to de-link it, to deunitize the production, and allow Trinidad and Tobago to produce the Manatee side, that is the gas of the Loran Manatee field, on our side of the border, and allow us to produce it without them. But, of course, should the sanctions be lifted, then we can also assist them in the production of the Loran side, which really we as Trinidad and Tobago have to hope is not too far in the distant future, because that would allow us to access, hopefully, that 10 to 11 TCF of gas. And it would assist Venezuela in bringing, for the first time, their gas resource to international market. Because as I said, Trinidad and Tobago really is, we are a province that should be proud that we can bring gas to international markets either via LNG, ammonia, methanol, and some other commodities. So the Manatee field is significant. Shell is the sole producer of this Manatee field. We've worked hard with Shell in the last few years since they returned to Trinidad. They see this as a major future for gas. We see it because when you look at the production profiles, we're fine in 2022, we increase in 2022, 2023. Again, we start to look at a bit of a decline in 24, 25, but then Manatee should kick in, keeping us going 25, 26, 27 into the future. And the gas production we expect from Manatee will start off at around 350 scuffs of gas and go up to as much as 700 scuffs of gas from the Manatee side. We, of course, are working with Shell, trying to persuade Shell that the infrastructure they put down in Manatee should be significant infrastructure, because there's nothing out there, and in bringing that gas to market, bringing it to shore. But we will do so with the hope that one day we will also have access to further reserves of gas, maybe not within our borders and across the border there as well.
All right, but what is the reason for this signing at this time? Is there anything that you were waiting on, or was this time?
Okay, understood.
Yeah.
I mean, if I could have signed this 2 years ago, I would have signed it 2 years ago. Trinidad and Tobago needs to secure gas production. So the signing of this could not come quicker, as far as I'm concerned, as a citizen of Trinidad and Tobago. The significance of it is we did a lot of hard work. It first was conceptualized as delinking it from the Loran side in 2018, 2019. That's when the conversation began. And then we had to, first of all, secure that agreement from Venezuela. I remember you all asking, about my trips to Venezuela, when I had made some trips to Venezuela. That was one of the conversations, persuading and working with our Venezuelan counterparts for them to agree that we can delink it and deunitize it. Fortunately, we were able to do that due to the good relations, and we got that signed off. As soon as that was done, the next priority began negotiating now with Shell. Because what we need to understand with multinational oil and gas companies like Shell, BP, BHP that's now been acquired by Woodside and these companies, as the market shrinks globally, the hydrocarbon market, you're now competing for limited capital. So in other words, the boardroom of Shell takes a decision annually and projecting into their future. If we're going to spend $2 billion US, where are we going to spend that in our global portfolio? And they have portfolios everywhere, in many countries, sorry, not everywhere, of the world for different reasons. So Trinidad and Tobago has to compete against other countries in the world to say, look, spend your money here, invest your capital here in Trinidad and Tobago. We're a good province, good returns for you. So immediately we began negotiating the Manatee PSC to make it commercially attractive, not only for Shell, but as I continue to say, my mandate as the Minister of Energy Industries, and even before when I was assisting in negotiations, is always to get the best returns we possibly can for Trinidad and Tobago and the citizens for depleting resources. But understanding the balance is we have to stay competitive globally. So the importance of now is we negotiated. It was very difficult negotiations. The government listened, we changed some terms, we made some terms better, some terms, and this type of thing. And finally, both sides were able to say, okay, we have a PSC, a production sharing contract, that we can both live with. And this will now allow Shell to produce this Manatee gas going forward in the future. And right now, they're doing the plans for the type of infrastructure that they lay down. They estimate the spend that they're going to put into Manatee and the development of that gas to produce it is about $1.8 billion US. And we're pushing them as hard as we can to bring that gas to market as soon as we can. This is the largest field, but it's not the only thing we have going on. I mean, we have meetings with EOG. I'm constantly in conversation with BHP. And I've made contact with the CEO, Ms. Meg O'Neill of Woodside. I'm actually heading up to Houston in a couple of weeks, hoping to meet with other players. I'm going to Cabinet this week, which is actually tomorrow, for approval and confirmation of the bid rounds, the deep water bid rounds. And I've told my Cabinet colleagues, and they understand, that we need to change the way we operate in Trinidad and Tobago in the energy field. It can't be how we operated for the last few decades because we are competing globally. You have two things happening. One, our resources are shrinking, but two, you have globally this conversation about move away from hydrocarbons. And in addition to that, you have other nearby provinces and other areas in the world with much larger reserves. So how do you attract international investment to Trinidad and Tobago to continue exploration and production of our hydrocarbon industry, our oil and our gas? We have to change the way we've done business, and I'm happy to tell the population of Trinidad and Tobago we've proved we can do that with this Manatee PSC. We approached it very differently. We listened, we did what we had to, we pushed back at Shell hard where we needed to. Shell has been a good partner to Trinidad and Tobago, and we're hoping to do this with some of the other players. And that is why the bid round, this deep water bid round that I'm hoping Cabinet will approve, this deep water bid round is crucial and critical for Trinidad and Tobago because it has to be successful. The future of gas production in Trinidad and Tobago depends on these next sets of bid rounds, starting with the deep water. We're then going to have a shallow water and an on land. There's a lot of intention. There's a lot of interest by persons. They've already identified the blocks they're interested in, but it comes down to the terms. Yesterday, I made a presentation, a feature address to the Energy Chamber about government policy and working with the Chamber to move it forward. One of the things I signaled there, or echoed, was what you heard Minister Imbert as the Minister of Finance say in the budget. He said that the Ministry of Energy and the Ministry of Finance are going to work together to look at the fiscal regime in our energy sector and see what needs to be amended, what needs to be tweaked, etc. Because I keep pushing this conversation. We need to remain competitive in a rapidly changing global environment, and that is exactly what I intend for Trinidad and Tobago to do. And again, I make a plug. Manatee proves we can do it, because in a difficult time, when you have shareholders of these companies putting pressure on the boards, we managed to persuade Shell to work with Shell to negotiate a production sharing contract that allows Shell to produce Manatee and the people of Trinidad and Tobago to get the benefits of that. So gas will flow to LNG, gas will continue to flow to our domestic petchem sector.
All right. So the key issue was the negotiation of a production sharing contract. That came to an end now, and on the basis of that, you could have signed. Now, Manatee is not likely to yield gas until 2025. What is going to happen now, and how is that going to make a difference to Trinidad and Tobago 2022, 2023? What difference is going to make to the services sector? What difference is it going to make to workers in the system? And what is the meaning of local content in the context of this production sharing contract and the framework that you have established with Shell?
Manatee is one project. I mean, there are a lot of other things going on. You have Touchstone doing some great work onshore. We're pushing other producers. You have EOG, who have signed a joint venture with Heritage for the Soldado field and for that whole Gulf for oil production, and they are expecting good things. Right now they're doing appraisals, etc. So I am hoping that all of these projects are going to continue stimulating our local service industry. I certainly know on the Touchstone side, EOG yesterday I met with the GM of Perenco in Trinidad, as well as one of their international directors who came down. And that conversation was Perenco telling us what their plans, their intentions are. I discussed with them, as I was just saying, about us looking at the fiscal regime, in particular on oil production, where they're interested. And I am going to go to Cabinet with suggestions on the SPT regime on oil production and a tiered scale system. And hopefully that will trigger further production and make us continuingly competitive in that global environment. The service sector, yesterday I engaged with the service sector at this Energy Chamber discussion. The service sector, we are here to work with the service sector. We're here to facilitate them. They have a lot of other areas and provinces nearby. You have Guyana and Suriname that are also getting very heavily involved into this hydrocarbon economy. When I met with the Surinamese delegation last week, I told them we are open door. We're here to discuss with them, to assist them with policy, to tell them where Trinidad and Tobago may have stumbled in the past, learn from our mistakes, but also learn from our successes. When we negotiate with these other multinational companies, what are the points that you should look for, etc. So these are some of the areas that the service companies are going to get work from. When that $1.8 billion is spent in Trinidad and Tobago, I'm going to be pushing hard for as much of it to stay here as possible. So one of the other conversations is continuing with the manatee development on a local content side is the utilization of existing NGC structures and infrastructure that is available. So, I have to smile sometimes when you see these reports in the newspaper and just shake my head at persons who don't know exactly what they're talking about. Because sometimes, not sometimes, you always take lemons and you make lemonade. So there are opportunities for use of NGC's infrastructure and things that they've spent money on for this manatee project. And that's what we're pushing Shell to do. And that conversation is going well. Also, the use of local service companies, the fabrication of anything that needs to be fabricated, as much of it to be done in Trinidad and Tobago. Recently, when I was with the Prime Minister in London and we were meeting with both BP and Shell, the Prime Minister is a main advocate of as much fabrication as can be done in Trinidad and Tobago. It should be done. In my recent meeting with EOG, and I'll be meeting with the new EOG CEO in a couple of weeks' time up in Houston. In my meeting with EOG recently, they told us that they use Tufco to fabricate certain parts of a new platform that they're making, etc. So these are the things we have to continue doing. Our service companies have to stay nimble. They have to look for opportunities also outside of Trinidad and Tobago. But the government has always pushed local content. And it's funny you should ask that, Abo. I've always felt that we need to define local content more. It's too much of a loose conversation. And one of the things I'm considering is the same way when you're utilizing foreign firms in the construction and infrastructure industry, that you say a certain percentage of the spend must be for Trinidad and Tobago labor, it must be for Trinidad and Tobago materials, etc. Is that something that should be introduced either via legislation into these contracts with the producers? Because we have to, as a government, assimilate, we have to assist the local content and our service industry, amongst others.
The local content component is a serious issue because it's not just the construction of platforms or getting a piece of the pie at different points in the value chain, but it's also the knowledge side too, because we have the knowledge capacity here to play a major role in international projects of this kind, and there is no reason why the knowledge side should come from abroad. So I just wanted to raise that because it's an important issue. And I hope we're going to get the platform construction and so on back to Trinidad and Tobago and make sure that it's competitive,
Bo, you're 100% right. And let me just tell Trinidad and Tobago and the citizens, that is actually happening. I am very proud that every time we meet with these foreign investors, they are always quick to point out to you the Trinidadians and Tobagonians who are in their structures all over the world. In fact, in a meeting with Metanex recently, they were saying that they consider the Trinidad and Tobago staff the best and some of the best in their whole organization globally. And what they do is they export our Trinidad and Tobago staff, and they then, our citizens, and they then get that experience. It has been the same thing with Shell, with BHP, with BP. I mean, you go and you meet with Bernard Looney. Bernard Looney's assistant. This is a Trinidadian. And, that is something that has been happening in the BP family for a long time. And this is what is taking place. So I'm always very proud to see that. I mean, you meet with Nutria and all of these players. So our locals, our citizens are very much integrated into the value chain of oil and gas and exported around the world to get that experience. And what I'm asking is that they continue to plug for Trinidad and Tobago, to say we continue to be a competitive province, to say that we're a good place to invest, but also that knowledge where we can now be exporting that knowledge to help not only our CARICOM neighbors who are now getting into these ventures, but also as far away as Africa, as you know, we've exported our expertise, we've had people from Trinidad and Tobago out there advising, etc. And this is what needs to continue. So I'm always very proud as a Trinidadian whenever we go to these international meetings with these international stakeholders and you see the number of Trinidadians, some of whom I've known before, some of who are old schoolmates and stuff, so I'm proud of that. And you see them at very integral parts in the infrastructure of these companies as a human asset base.
All right. I think this is a particularly potent part of the conversation with the multinationals, especially when we see what is happening in Guyana, where most of the oil is very far offshore, and they simply produce the oil and ships come and take it.
Correct.
And there's very little that Guyana
interaction onshore.
Yes, gets out of it. But anyway, I want to put some questions together. I'm going to take a break now, but I'm going to raise the questions to you before so you can reflect upon them, and when we come back, we'll talk about it. First of all, is Shell the total investor in financial terms in this project? In other words, is the $1.8 billion that you talk about going to come from Shell? And
yes, that's an easy one to answer.
All right, so that's good. And the second thing, is it, given that they are the major player now and they basically are going to make the gas possible, is there likely to be other multinational players in the process anytime between now and 2025, or will that happen after 2025? And well, I'll leave that question with you. And when we come back, we'll talk to that. Speak to that. We take a break now for commercials, and this is Brighter Morning with Bo. We are talking to the Minister of Energy, Minister Stuart Young, and I am Bo Tiwari. We come right back, so hold on, and we're going to talk, and you are part of the discussion.
Welcome to Lifetime Solutions, where you can trust your roof to us. Our services include custom fabrication, steel framing, roofing installation, on-site roll forming, roofing maintenance and services. Call 223-ROOF or 223-7663 for a quote today, or visit our website www.lifetimesolutionstt.com. Lifetime Solutions. You can trust your roof to us. Call 223-ROOF or 223-7663 for a quote today, or visit our website www.lifetimesolutionstt.com.
As businesses adapt to the new normal, let Magic Mist take care of your cleaning and sanitization needs with our COVID-19 BSCAI internationally certified technicians. With over 43 years of protecting the health of our nation, you can trust us to ensure your building remains safe, healthy, and functional. Give us a call today at 638-6675 or 332-5522. Magic Mist Services Limited, your total facilities management solutions provider.
Yes, we are right back, and we're talking to Minister of Energy, Stuart Young. And the question we asked really was, what's going to happen with the Manatee gas? Is it so Shell is investing $1.8 billion. They are going to have the rights to the gas. But is it beyond that, are other multinationals going to be involved, or are they going to be involved along the way to 2025?
Absolutely, Bo. As I said, this Manatee field is Shell's field. They are the producer of Manatee, so they will bring that gas to market. Some will go to LNG, some will go to the domestic market. We get into those discussions with them, meaning the pricing, etc. But there are other projects on. I mean, you have BP. They have agreed. They're restarting their infill drilling program. They're looking at Mentos, which is a joint venture with EOG. They have other projects they're waiting to sanction, so we expect some stimulus from BP as well. Right now, what I'm waiting anxiously for is the conclusion of the acquisition and merger between BHP and Woodside, which was why it was so critical. I had that conversation with the CEO of Woodside and Ms. Meg O'Neill, and if she's going to be in Houston in the next couple of weeks, we will meet to continue those conversations. But until the regulators and the shareholders have given the stamp of approval and the green light. And why that is critical is because, remember, BHP is currently appraising the deepwater gas in the Calypso project. So in addition to Manatee, the other big area of gas that we expect to come to market is going to be from deepwater. And deepwater is really a virgin territory. There's no infrastructure out there. So we have to work hard, and I'm anxiously waiting to work and to discuss what needs to be done and how we can commercialize and monetize that deepwater gas. So that's always also an area. You have Touchstone working very hard on some gas fields onshore, so that should assist the NGC basket of gas. Onshore gas, of course, being a lot cheaper to produce than offshore gas. So you have Touchstone, and they could be as much as 100 to 200 scuffs of gas a day. And there are other projects. You have EOG. EOG has been very consistent, very stable, and bringing in their 300 scuffs of gas on a daily basis and thereabouts. So you have these things going on, and we're pushing them to see what other projects there are, what can be sanctioned. I'm constantly working with the Ministry of Energy staff and personnel, the young people, the experienced people, and saying, let us identify where their projects up to this week, end of last week, again having that conversation with the PSs, that I need to sit down with them to identify what are the potential projects, how do we get those across the line, how do we get the multinationals to sanction these projects. So yes, you have continued investment from BP. Bernard Looney, the CEO of BP, made that very clear to the Prime Minister and myself, that Trinidad and Tobago continues to be one of their major assets. And one of the things for Trinidad and Tobago that we hopefully will be fortunate with is many of these multinationals are not being permitted by their shareholders to go into any new province. They're being told, don't go expanding your hydrocarbon business outside of where you're already at. So what we need to do is focus on those in Trinidad and Tobago. I mean, even in the conversation with Perenco yesterday, they are saying that now a third of their global production is in gas. And I was telling them, well, look, I need you to move quickly on. They have a gas field, Onyx, and I need you all to move quickly to the production of that gas. So there are these types of conversations taking place, but especially the BP and the Shell, they need to continue producing gas as the major shareholders of Atlantic LNG to have that feedstock of gas going in.
We need to come to the end of the conversation and break for news, but I need to ask you three important questions, and I don't know if I can get to all of them, but what I want to ask you, who has knowledge of the extent of proven reserves in deep water? And what are we doing to get this deep water production and drilling going? I mean, there must be fiscal issues that we need to attend to. You've talked about that. There must be negotiations that have to be had, etc. There must be basically bid rounds that have to be initiated. What is happening with the deep water side?
Understood. I've touched on some of that, both, so let me just kind of pull it all together.
Yes. Yeah, please do.
Right now, BHP is the one spending the money out in deep waters. We know they've done a number of appraisal wells. They've been good appraisals so far. Right now, they're doing a fourth one, Bongo 4, We're waiting on the results of that appraisal and then getting into the conversation with the commercialization and monetization. This acquisition by Woodside has put a little bit of a delay on it because whereas you're discussing with BHP was clear as to where they were going, etc. Their oil and gas assets, their petroleum assets are now being acquired by Woodside. So you now have to start having that conversation with a new entity called Woodside. And whilst the BHP factor must go in, and I'm meeting with BHP's executives when I go up to Houston, and we're pushing that along. So those conversations have begun. I've been having those conversations with them for quite a few months now, well over a year. What do we need to do to commercialize it? We've also told them it plays right into the restructuring of Atlantic LNG. So they may be able to get LNG plays coming out of the development of that deepwater gas, which is what whoever's going to develop it wants. They want to know that they're not only going to sell gas to a domestic market, but they have an opportunity to get into LNG as well. So that is part of the restructuring exercise and conversation. So these are all of the things going on with the BHP assets in deepwater. As I said, I'm going to Cabinet this week, that is tomorrow, to get approval to launch the bid rounds for the deepwater gas. Part of the trip, the reason for the trip to Houston is the World Petroleum Congress, is that we're going up there to market these deepwater bids, but we already have, including BP and Shell, telling us they've identified blocks in deepwater that they're interested in. They are the ones who are going to have to look at the infrastructure as to how they bring that deepwater gas to market. I got Cabinet approval to release the latest Ryder Scott report that talks about proven probable reserves, as the old technical terms. So I will do that when I return from Houston and talk about that. And that comes out from the seismic and also the appraisal wells that were done by BHP out in the deepwater. And these companies have taken a look at it and they have an idea. But as you know, until you get into the ground, it's just an idea based on a lot of science and geology as to how much reserves there really are there. But the deep water is the future for Trinidad and Tobago, that and their cross-border gas. We're also then going to go very shortly in Q1 of 2022 with the shallow water and the onshore bid rounds. And we have a lot of interest, especially on the onshore blocks right now. A lot of people reaching out saying they're very interested. They want to get into the ground onshore.
When do you foresee that we're going to have enough TCFs of gas to be able to supply trains 1, 2, 3, and 4 of Atlantic LNG?
I think that Atlantic LNG, as I say, we're in a restructuring conversation. I think what we need to realize is as we mature as a province and there has become less available gas and less prioritization of where gas goes, etc., the face and the structure of Atlantic is likely to change. So I want to complete those conversations, complete those negotiations. We just simply didn't have sufficient gas to keep all 4 trains going. And I think that is something, as the Prime Minister indicated when we came back, that people have to get their minds wrapped around. It is not the end for Trinidad and Tobago by any means. And in fact, part of the conversation we're having is when the potential of that cross-border gas becomes available, what do we then do if we once again in a position where we have excess gas to run 4, 5 trains going forward in the future? It's a little premature to make any conclusion on that right now.
I'll have to close and break for the news on this final question.
Thanks.
What will happen to the arrangements that we've made both with Venezuela on Lorraine Manatee and with Shell on Manatee if there is either a change of government in Venezuela or a change of government in both countries?
Absolutely nothing. We'll continue as we are right now. That was the agreement. It was signed by the government of Venezuela with us to allow the delinking, the deunitization, and that will continue to be enforced. I always smile in the last term when people were saying that who are you speaking to in Venezuela? But the government of Trinidad and Tobago expects that whoever is the government in Venezuela at the time will understand the sanctity of contracts that have been entered into, and there's absolutely no current disadvantage the people of Venezuela. And I'm hoping that whoever is the government in Venezuela, including the incumbent government, we continue to have discussions about working together with Trinidad and Tobago to be able to monetize their significant gas fields and bring it to international markets through Trinidad and Tobago. That could only benefit the people of Venezuela and the people of Trinidad and Tobago.
Mr. Young, I want to thank you for taking the time to be with me this morning and for having this conversation on the gas future of Trinidad and Tobago and our prospects and what is likely to happen. It is an important conversation. I hope you are going to come back. I want to explore this issue of driving so hard with this gas production process, both in shallow and deep water, and at the same time making the transition based on COP26 decisions. But that would be for another time. Thank you very much.
Thanks. Take care, everyone.
All right. Thank you very much for watching. This is Brighter Morning with Bo on MCTV in Trinidad and Tobago and the region. And I am Bo Tiwari, your host. We break now with Andrew Chan for the news at 7.